Hi, Christie.
Hi, Jeff.
We're recording now.
The many hours of conversation you and I have had,
Yeah.
we've had probably half of them that haven't been recorded.
You know what we should do? We should start a podcast.
You think? Let's call it the why and the buy. How's
All
that?
right. Welcome back, everybody, to this episode of the Why and the Buy podcast. I am here again after a brief hiatus. You listeners couldn't tell this because we still, we still distribute every week, but it's been a couple of weeks since I've talked to my friend Christie Walters. How are you, Christie?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm
Happy
doing
belated
awesome.
Thanksgiving.
Belated Thanksgiving, yes. I am fat, happy, and rested, and excited to be back in the saddle, having a great conversation with you as always. And this week, we've got Sean Ogle of Location Rebel and Breaking 80. This guy is someone that I've been talking to over the interwebs now for a couple of months, but this is the first time we've actually been able to speak face to face, and I'm really excited to have him here with us today because as a salesperson, and maybe like you as a salesperson, as you're out there listening, you have felt this need to be attached to your business at any moment, and at all moments rather, because at any moment a customer could call, could send you an email, could send you a text message, and you feel like you have to respond because every time we get in situations like this, we feel like we have to respond immediately, and it drives me crazy because you can even tell my speech is picking up because there's just this low-level anxiety that seems to plague salespeople all the time. And better than anybody else that I've ever met or interacted with, Sean Ogle has seemed to be able to separate himself from that anxiety. He may tell me different here in a minute, but the ability to integrate your work life with your personal life. And here's a guy who's traveled around the world recently while still maintaining to keep all of his businesses running at the same time. And I think that there are some lessons here that even salespeople working for the man, so to speak, can glean from you, Sean. So thanks for being here.
No, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
So who the hell are you?
I teach people through my online course and my online community how to build small businesses that allow them the freedom to work from wherever they want, whether that's working from home, travel, and we've got a variety of different types of businesses I help people build depending on what their goals are and what their interests are. How did this
whole thing start? What are you doing here?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm the most average white middle class guy you could ever imagine. That was my upbringing. I never had giant entrepreneurial, dreams or whatever, but I always knew what was coming next. I always knew that I was, going to go to Oregon State University, room with my best friend, and major in business. 6 months before I graduated, I had a job lined up. I knew exactly what I was going to do. What I did not know was that the recession was going to hit, pretty much right as I graduated from college, and it was going to make, the finance guy that I worked for unhappy. It was going to make our clients unhappy, and most of all, it was going to make me unhappy. And so when that happened, I ended up begging my boss to take a 2-week vacation, use all of my vacation days to go down to Rio for Carnival. And that was kind of the moment that everything changed for me. That was when I was sitting on a beach with a coconut in my hand thinking, I should be able to do this whenever I want. And it didn't hurt that the day I got back was the day that my boss gave me a 20% pay cut, saying that either we all take 20% pay cuts, it was a small company, or I get fired. And so he thought that was the better option. And so once that happened, it kind of changed my perspective and put me down a different path. And it's one that I'm continuing on today.
So the guts to say I deserve to have a coconut in my hand anytime I want is really, really gutsy. I mean, that's ballsy right there, Sean. So I got to give you that. The other thing that should be noticed is that everybody in the company took a 20% pay cut so that you could take a 20% pay cut. That's pretty, you must have been doing something special. What's in your secret sauce there?
Well, I think we have to look at it. There was the two principals of the company, and there was our administrative assistant and me. So that was not like this was a big giant thing. It was mostly, I think, the fact they needed me, for some of the things I was doing, and that was the real option. So, I'll be totally honest. I was not the best at my job as a financial analyst. It wasn't something that I was super passionate about. I never got to experience the joys of a bull market. So, in the end, kind of what ended up happening was my boss and I just didn't see eye to eye on, how the business should be run. And he was very old school. He wouldn't embrace, the internet. He wouldn't embrace, even online documents. Everything was like hand signed and filed away. And I wanted to modernize things a little bit. I wanted to leverage the internet. I wanted to, look at all the opportunities that afforded people and, the advances in technology. And that's, is that desire that has kind of pushed me down the path that I'm on now. We were talking right before the call about, technological proficiency and things like that. And I think a lot of it stemmed from those early days of not being able to leverage it, which made me want to leverage it even more for the stuff that I was doing on my own.
Yeah, that internet thing, it's such a passing fad, right?
Yeah, right.
So, here's the interesting thing. All right, so I'm the oldest by far on this call. And I know what's happening in the heads of some of the people that are listening that are closer to my age. And that's like, oh, well, yeah, you were just out of college. I mean, college kids kind of do that thing where they go out and they tour the world. But this is more than that for you, right, Sean? I mean, there are a lot of people that go and have a coconut drink on the beach and think, this is the life I should be living. And then they go home and they go right back to their 9-to-5 jobs. So what is it that's different about you and your approach to this that I think there's a lot more here that our listeners need to be aware of?
Yeah. So, I went on my adventure. I left my job about 3 years after being into it. I moved to Thailand, where I lived for the better part of a year. And I started learning everything I could about online business and growing my own blog, which is now Location Rebel. And I think one of the biggest things that I realized while I was doing all of that was at the time, we'll put it this way, at the time I was very selfish. I wasn't happy in my life. And I knew that if I couldn't make myself happy, I was never going to be that valuable to anybody else. And so I think the driving factor behind all of this was I was selfish early on so that I could make myself happy. And now my entire business is helping make people happier through the power of entrepreneurship, building websites, building businesses. And I think that's the thing that's kind of kept me going. That's the thing that's, separated what I might do versus somebody else. And it's been the thing that's enabled me to have the freedom that I have in my life, is just kind of taking the mindset. It sounds cliche, but the more people I help, the more I'm going to get the things that I want in life as well. Yeah.
Was it ever hard to stay with that and not take the job or?
Absolutely. I mean, it's even still hard. I've developed a fairly unique skill set. So I still have a few, high paying, typical job opportunities each year. And every time you're kind of like, oh, well, that sounds kind of nice. There's always the fluctuations in income and the insecurity and the kind of wondering, well, when is the fairy tale going to end? When is all of a sudden everything going to disappear? But you kind of realize that the people you help and the, thousands of people I've gotten to know through the website is super meaningful to me. That's kind of what keeps me going. And the fact that it enables me to travel 3 or 4 months out of the year. It's enabled me to make, much more money than I was making as a financial analyst, and essentially just do the things that I enjoy doing on a more regular basis. So you put all that together and it just kind of becomes a no-brainer to keep working on this business.
Well, and Christie is noticing it. I'm noticing it too. And it's terrifying when you first get started, and especially when you have families and things like that. It's like, well, wait. And logically, you can talk yourself into it because there's a reason you're having that conversation, that inner dialogue to begin with. But then moving beyond that and realizing that there's still this primal fear of, oh my gosh, this safety net is gone, right? You know how hard it is to get fired? I mean, seriously, it's really, really hard to get fired. I've worked in companies where I can't believe people have, I mean, if you're mediocre at best, you're going to have a job. And, but then you strike out on your own and all of a sudden it's like, okay, there's a way bigger, there's a huge difference between doing well enough to not get fired and being good enough to get hired. I mean, it's just, especially by multiple people for multiple projects. And I wonder if you're noticing this, Sean. I think I know the answer to this, but even though you turn down these opportunities that may be for, worth more money than what you're bringing in with this business right now, if you look at the trend in your business, it's probably growing incrementally, if not monthly, then at least quarterly and definitely yearly. How long before that trend is going to surpass any opportunity that anybody can offer you? And then, look, you're a young guy. I mean, the long-term prospects for you are through the roof.
Totally. And it's probably not that far off that, the business will outweigh just about any opportunity that can come my way. But I think the one thing that's really important to understand, and this is one thing that's kind of unique about me and my business, and, some of the hustlers and overachievers out there might scoff at this, but I'm not necessarily trying to build a giant multi-million 7-8 figure business. I'm at the point where I do this because I get to help people on a more personal basis. I get to do the things I want to do, and I have very little stress associated with it. I have one, part-time, community manager, project manager that helps me with all the stuff I do. So I'm at the point where it's like, hey, if I can get to the point where I'm, every year consistently bringing in, $500,000 to $1 million in my business, that's an awesome place to be. And as soon as you start really trying to scale, hugely past that, you get a lot more stress, you get a lot more responsibility. And so I'm very honest with myself about what I want out of the business and what I want out of life, and how the best way is to go about achieving that.
What's interesting there too, and you didn't throw small numbers around, right? So let's not. Right. I mean, and that's totally fine. But the way you've spoken about it is actually very similar, if not exactly the same, to the way I feel about it. I do not have a financial goal for my business. There is a level of comfort, obviously, that comes along with, there's a level of finance that you have to reach in order to be comfortable, right? I've got kids, I've got a wife, Absolutely. I've got a house to pay for, a car payment, things like that. So you have to kind of check those boxes off. But I think what a lot of people think, and I think it makes it backwards, is they think that they've got to earn a certain dollar a month or a dollar amount every year, every month in order to feel happy like that. And you're leading with the happiness. You're leading with this is what I want out of it, and knowing that if you help enough people, then enough of that money is going to come to help you do the things that make you happy. And you know what? Hey, if it's $500,000, if it's $750,000, hey, one year I have a great year and I do $1.2 million. That's awesome. What does that allow me to do? Well, maybe it takes a year off my working career. Maybe I can retire a year early. But when you're doing stuff like this, who even thinks about retirement? This is completely backwards to the way our parents thought about things.
Absolutely. And frankly, it really is not about a certain dollar amount at all. You're absolutely right. I look at what I'm doing, and I'm essentially trying to continue doing what I'm doing back. I want to be able to keep doing what I was doing back in 2010 when I moved to Thailand and was making $800 a month. But I was doing all the thing. I had the free time to travel. I was able to go, meet people for drinks anytime I wanted. I was able to go golf whenever I wanted. And I look at how my business has grown over the last 7 years, and not much has changed. I might belong to a nicer golf club, for instance.
Right.
But I'm still playing golf on my own time. I'm still taking the same trips. I might stay in a slightly, nicer hotel, but I'm still doing all the things I was doing back when I was making no money. And so it's much more about the freedom than it is about, the dollar amount.
How does family react, or how do other people react to your choice of career and path? Do they understand it? Are they energized by it, or are they thinking, okay, well, this is going to pass?
They get it now. Now they're very supportive. Back in 2009 when I left my job, they were frustrated. They were scared for me because, I had a finance job. I was one of the few people that, was in a good position, or not one of the few people, but, when I look at some of my friends, I had, probably more room for growth than some of the positions they were in at the time. And they're like, what are you doing? Do this once the economy starts getting better. Right now you need to save your money and stay in this position. And I also had friends that, like I said, I was selfish at the time. When I decided to move to Thailand, it wasn't really a conversation with my girlfriend at the time. It was hey, I'm going to do this. I have to do this for myself. If I don't do it now, it's never going to happen. I have to make myself happy first before I'm going to be able to make anybody else happy. And so I lost some friends over that. I had people that were like, this is completely unfair of you to do this to your girlfriend and your family and whatever. That girl is now my wife. It was the best thing I ever could have done for our relationship. But early on, people didn't get it. And I also think, that was 8 years ago now. I think now it is a lot more socially acceptable. There's more people out there that are doing it. The idea of building a business online isn't this foreign concept anymore. So I think people are a lot more accepting of it now than they were back when I first started.
All right. Enough of this. How do people get started? What are the first steps that someone needs to talk or to take? We've been talking about kind of the underlying foundation of that, and that's really where my business lives too, is in these foundational principles. But I mean, we've got your, the backbone for why you started this business and looking at the opportunity that lies before you and that lied before you back then. How does someone get started? How does someone work more on this integration rather than being a slave to a job or a slave to a phone at the very least?
Yeah.
And, maybe you don't have to move to Thailand, all right? I'm hoping that you don't have to move to Thailand. I kind of like it where I am. But, what can we all do to really start looking into, and not necessarily that you have to build an online business, but what are some of the principles that allowed you to kind of break free from feeling, kind of stuck where you were?
The one thing that no matter where you start that was extremely beneficial for me that I always recommend for people is you have to learn the relevant skills. So many people, they'll read the 4-Hour Work Week or some book like that. They'll be like, I'm going to create a passive income business and I'm going to go and I'm going to make all this money on the internet. And they start with all of the like advanced affiliate marketing, membership sites, e-commerce apps. They start with all the fun stuff. It's actually extremely difficult to do if you don't have the background and you don't know what to do.
Yes.
So I tell people, first you've got to learn the skills. And the best way I know to do that is to build a training ground for yourself. So my training ground was my blog back in 2009. I started a WordPress blog that taught me about search engine optimization, that taught me about copywriting, that taught me about social media for business, that taught me the basics of web design. So I think anybody that thinks they might want to do something online or build some sort of a lifestyle business, these are skills that are essential. And so I recommend everybody start a website, whether it's a personal blog or it's something marketing your services or whatever, start a website, be active and treat that as your own personal training ground. As you're going through each week, you're going to be learning these skills. And I didn't even realize I was doing it at the time. It was a couple of years later. I was like, if I hadn't started that blog, I never would have known how to do these things that now make me money.
That's really, really strong advice because, the average salesperson will talk to me and say, well, why do I need to start a blog? Why does anybody care what I have to say? What if my customers read it?
What if your customers talk to you?
Well, here's the thing, and you guys know this better than anyone. Sales is all about rapport. It's all about relationships. People, like if you've got two people that are equally qualified, you're going to go with the guy that you like better, the girl that you like better. A blog is an opportunity to demonstrate and build rapport with all of those potential people out there. There's thousands of people that are doing variations of what I'm doing. And the reason that people buy my course or they email me or they trust me is because of that relationship. There's some connection. Jeff, for you and me, we're both into golf. That's how that connection started. And, if you were reading my site, say you found Location Rebel first and, you're thinking about maybe buying my course and, then you see that I'm a golfer, all of a sudden that's going to earn bonus points. And so I think that's, if you want to look at it from that perspective, on top of building the skills, it could actually become, a benefit to somebody that's in sales.
And, there's so much, on the rapport part, there's so much to be said about letting your customers or people who could be your customers see who you really are. And, we were kind of taught when we were growing up that, you don't talk about religion, you don't talk about politics, you stay away from the really, really polarizing stuff. I know some people who go there. I don't really choose to go there very often. Yeah. And so you can still stay away from it. You don't have to show people your most extreme side. But now everybody's got a megaphone, for better or for worse. And you get to choose what you tell people about yourself, and you get an opportunity still, even right now, even though everybody has a megaphone, not everybody chooses to use it. You get an opportunity to really reach people in a way that you weren't able to reach them before. And, for as much as you're going to do homework about a prospective client, they're going to do homework about you. What are they going to find? If they find nothing, you're in trouble because there's a lot of people out there where they're going to find some information. And, that gets back to the genesis of this very podcast. I mean, Christie and I being able to have conversations like this and for people to get a real ad lib, demonstration or representation of how we feel about things. I don't pull any punches on this podcast, and neither does Christie. And, this is not a scripted interview, as everybody by now is well aware. And, there's a reason behind all that. I mean, what are people going to find? And it even goes beyond that, too. You may put stuff out there, and this is what I realized about writing and about talking and creating videos and things like that, is the way that you present and the way that you can crystallize your talking points or your feelings about the things that you write, talk about, the things that you sell, the things that you see. It really helps make you a better salesperson when you're in front of a customer one-on-one, because you've had to put the extra thought, the extra time, the extra effort into it. For me, I'm in the middle of writing this book. This is not about having a book that I can sell people with my picture on the cover, and much more about me really solidifying the things that have been swimming around in my head for the last 10 years.
Yep.
And the benefits to that are so much bigger than what you can quantify in a paycheck or a commission or, even an online business. What have you learned? What's the biggest lesson that you've learned, Sean, about yourself in this entire process?
Oh man, there are so many lessons I've learned about myself in this process. I think one comes down to values and the things that you value. Some people, value, money. Some people value things. Some people value relationships. I think that the thing that I've learned is that I value experiences with, the people in my life. Being able to take this, 2-month-long trip, and, it wasn't necessarily the most inexpensive trip to take. We traveled around Europe and Asia for 2 months. That was worth, any, material thing I could buy. Like, this was worth, 10 times more than that. And I think that the great thing about being able to work for myself and, the things I've been able to do have been those experiences, and trying to put that, trying to place the emphasis on that moving forward, whether it's in the business, whether it's, with my relationships or selling or whatever it is, that's kind of the thing that drives me. That's the reason that, we shot the desk video that you mentioned. It was like, hey, this would be a cool experience and can also help grow the business. So trying to think about it, from that perspective, what's a way that something that I can do that's going to, get me the experience I want while also being beneficial to the business and those people around me.
I love that. And I think what I hear from you is that it's taken a lot of hard work to get here. You've played around a bit, but the business has built itself to the point that it is now because you've put in the work. You really engaged there.
And I'll be honest, it probably wasn't as much hard work as people might think.
Yeah.
Granted, I've put in a lot of work, but the secret to that is it's not necessarily about working 12 hours a day for years and years and years. It's about consistently putting in effort every single day, even if it's only an hour a day or 2 hours a day. But I've worked nearly every day for the last 8 years on this business.
Yeah.
And the fact that my business, my personal life, and my interests all kind of collide, a lot of times it doesn't necessarily feel like work. So I might be doing something that I don't necessarily, think of as work, but consistency is the key to success with any of this. Because most people, they'll get started, they might start their blog, or they might start and try and find a freelance client or something. They'll hit a roadblock, they'll get frustrated, and they'll say, well, that didn't work. And then they'll go back to, their day job or whatever. But it's the people that will consistently put in effort nearly every day for 2, 3, 5 years. Those are the people that are going to have success. And that's what I've done.
I love it. So consistent, persistent action and finding the work that doesn't feel like work.
Absolutely.
Right?
That's what's worked for me.
That's the holy grail right there.
Well, okay. So there's a couple of concepts that haven't been specifically stated, but that I'm picking up on, and I want to try to kind of wrap together here. But and it sounds really new agey, kind of ooey gooey to say that, you find yourself. And once you find yourself, things kind of fall into place. But think about the work that you've put in that wasn't work. Think about you picking up and moving to Thailand. I don't know if you threw a dart at a world map and it hit Thailand and that's where you chose to go, or if there was some other specific reason. It doesn't matter. You chose to do something big, something drastic, and you moved away. you then had a lot of time by yourself to think about those things that were important. You had time to, whether you meditated specifically on it, or you just took a lot of long walks, or you just kind of sat in this new environment thinking, what the hell am I doing here? That thought process pays benefits in ways that are not immediately quantifiable. And when you start to learn those things, and when you're mindful enough about those things, you can start to put together a direction. It's not as easy as just setting a goal, creating a path, and then following the plan. To be able to understand and have a grasp of what you really feel the right path is and what is really important to you. You know, it was so profound, and you've said it twice now. If I can't make myself happy, how am I going to help anybody else? Yep. That is big. And, you know, to have that realization, you don't have those kind of realizations when you're busy following orders and marching in step and just doing what you're told, which is, you know, growing up, that's the way I was taught. I mean, you go to work, you get a job, you go to work, you do what you're told, you come home, you spend your money, you work so you can live in whatever time is left. And for you to flip that script, go away, pay attention to what you know feels right to you, and then be able to structure the work life around the personal life in a way where, hey, you still get to play golf. And you know what? You're always going to play golf because you can play golf forever, but because that's also very, very important to you. And you had the guts to create a work life around your personal values. And there are too many people listening right now who are afraid to do that because it's safe to do it the way that they've been doing. And, you know, I mentioned it before, and Christie was nodding in, agreement. It's terrifying to even think about that. But what I love about what you've done with Location Rebel is laying out a roadmap for, okay, look, I know this is scary, but let's talk about what really matters. And you go think about what really matters. And then let's start to write down some numbers. Okay, what's your rent cost? Well, what's your car cost? What does your food cost? What do you like to eat? What do you like to do? Okay, what is all? Okay, then round up by 10 or 15% just in case you forgot anything. Okay, is that number as scary as you thought it was? No, probably not.
Yep.
And then, all right. Now, how important is it to you to really pursue this? And if this is scary, and it is for a lot of people, Sean Ogle is willing to hold your hand to go through it, to take you a step at a time. And who cares how long it takes? But let's start building on this one step at a time. And I tell people this, I've told this to several people actually in the last 10 days to 2 weeks, which is why I think is particularly poignant. No step is too small if it's headed in the right direction. But you have to be able to have some concept of whether or not the direction you're headed in is the right one. Totally. And so let it take some time. Fine. Go as fast as you can, but knowing that as long as you're headed in the right direction, you're going fast enough. And that's a concept that not a lot of people can grasp. And I think, and that's really come out of my own reflection lately, and talking to people like Sean and talking to Christie every week and reading what's out there. It's there for you if you want it.
Well, and one thing that I want to mention, you mentioned a couple times just now that, it's scary. People, are afraid to make changes. And this was something that I thought a lot about as I made these very specific, very big, very scary changes. And one of the things, and I talk about this in Location Rebel, and it's kind of something that I've really latched onto over the last couple of years, is there's really only one thing that we're afraid of. There's only one fear in the world, and that fear is uncertainty. We're not afraid of spiders. We're afraid of the uncertainty surrounding whether or not that spider is going to bite us. We're not afraid of the dark. We're afraid of the uncertainty around what could be lurking in the shadows. And I've learned there's really 3 phases of uncertainty. And Tim Ferriss actually had a quote one time where he said, 95% of people will choose unhappiness over uncertainty. And I think that's absolutely true. People will take a comfortable, mediocre, good life, but they're not necessarily doing the things that they really, really want to do. And there's 3 phases of uncertainty. There's fearing it, which is where most people live, and they do everything they can to stay as far away from uncertainty as possible. They create routines that are predictable, maybe boring, maybe not fulfilling, but they know what's going to happen every day. The second phase is overcoming the fear of uncertainty. So when I moved to Thailand, I was still terrified. I didn't know what was going to happen, but I said, you know what, I'm going to overcome this fear. And that was the stage I was in. And then finally is step number 3, which is embracing it. And that's where most successful entrepreneurs lie. When you're embracing the uncertainty, you say, you know what, I don't know what's going to happen in the future. So therefore I can make anything I want happen. You know, those are the people that look at it as an asset rather than something to be feared. And I think that's an important mindset to take is, are you in stage 1, stage 2, or stage 3? Because once you make that mindset shift of trying to, stay as far away from uncertainty as possible and embracing the uncertainty and looking at it as an asset and something that most people are so afraid of, that gives you, an edge on them. I think that's just, it's an important thing to think about. So that was just kind of one thing that kind of came up as you were talking about this and talking about how, people so often are afraid to take make a change and take a step. And, that's how I've kind of overcome it in my own life.
Well, and it vacillates too, right? So, I mean, oftentimes you can go back and forth between overcoming the fear and embracing the fear. And then all of a sudden, 6 months goes by and something else comes up and you're like, oh, okay, here we go. I'm overcoming now. But it's, I think it's what I have experienced, at least, starting my business much later in life than you did, is just that kind of ebb and flow of fear that will either grab you or you can bust free from it. Right. So,
and there's absolutely an ebb and a flow to it. But the more often you kind of confront it and you say, okay, this is terrifying. I'm going to embrace this, or I'm going to start leaning that direction. The more often you do it, the more comfortable you become with it. Because what you're going to find more often than not is, think about the absolute worst case scenario. The chances are it's really not that bad. And the chances of that actually coming to fruition are also probably pretty slim. So, the more you embrace it and the more you kind of start dipping your toes in the water, the more you kind of start to realize, oh, this actually isn't as bad as I thought it was.
Right. And I think it's fascinating too, like how often we're coaching people in our businesses on that exact same thing. And then we find ourselves doing it as well. And we're like, okay, hello, are you not listening to what you're coaching? It's
totally.
Like the cobbler's kids have no shoes. That's the way that works.
Sean, what is something, or do you have any recommendations for our listeners? Is there something you've read recently that's really inspired you or kind of confirmed some of the things that you have come to believe all along? Or is there something you read early on or heard, even listened to? Maybe it was a TED Talk or just a recording of a speech that really inspired you to do great things?
Totally. I'll give you one of each. So, one of the books that I read really early on that I continue to go back to over and over again is Influence by Robert Cialdini, The Psychology of Persuasion. So it basically helps you understand how and what, techniques and methods people are using to sell you, so you can be aware and understand what psychological triggers they're using. But also it makes you more effective in your sales and your marketing. So I've used it specifically for copywriting. I don't do a whole lot of phone sales or one-on-one sales, but I use it a lot in those the concepts on my website. And then the other one that I've just started reading recently is Shoe Dog by Phil Knight. So it's kind of his memoir talking about how he started Nike and kind of the whole history of that. And I think you want to talk about someone who's taken risks, embraced uncertainty, and done big things. I think that his is one of the best stories that you're ever going to find. So, if you're looking for a little bit of inspiration to take some action and hear some cool stories along the way, so far that's proved to be a fascinating read.
Spoken like a true Oregonian.
Absolutely. Gotta give the Oregon love.
Excellent. So, Sean, I think we've heard already a fair amount about your why, but I'd like for you to sum it up for us. Tell us why it is, what gets you out of bed in the morning? Why do you do what you do?
You can really sum it up down to one word: happiness. Nice. If we're not happy, then what's the point of doing any of this? Yeah. If it doesn't matter how much money you have, it doesn't matter what you have or don't have. If you're happy and you're not hurting anybody else in the process, then that's all that matters. And so that's what I try and do with my businesses. Get people to the point where they're able to spend more time with the people they love, spend more time doing the things they love, which in turn has allowed me to experience all of those things in my own life. And so that's what it comes down to. I do it because I want to be happy. I want to see other people be happy. And if we've got that, then that's a good thing.
Yeah. So how do people find you?
Easiest way to find me is locationrebel.com. If you have any interest in any of the stuff we've talked about, that's the best starting point. You can also find me at Sean Ogle, SeanOgle, on Twitter, on Instagram. And if you're into golf, breaking80.com with 80 spelled out. So those are the best spots.
If you're a geek for golf like I am, then make sure you set aside a couple hours to go to breaking80.com and to find just, and I have, listen, in terms of internet wormholes, this is one I've fallen down pretty hard into. And I mean, I've found links to websites that, sell trinkets and ball markers and divot tools and head covers and just stuff. My wife just shakes her head and she sees what I'm looking at on the tablet, and it's kind of funny because I'm a total geek for that game. But Sean is a great follow, and he's very wise and has learned a lot and is very, very open about what he shares. And Location Rebel has taught me a lot. Sean, you've got an ebook on that site that you can download that really gives you all the tools that you need, a nice overview of the tools that you need just to get started, whether you want to start a side hustle or not. I mean, my side hustle, quote unquote, is my career. That's what I do right now. And I still learn some things from that ebook in terms of some tools that I should be checking out. And how are you utilizing some of those tools in ways I hadn't thought about? There's a ton of wisdom there. And I really appreciate you coming on, and I really appreciate all the work that you're doing to help people, because you've helped a lot and you're going to help even more. So thank you for coming and sharing some of that expertise with our audience. And speaking of our audience, and now I'm speaking to our audience, give us a thumbs up. Give us a rating. Share us with your friends. We think we put together a really good show here. And if you like it, then let us know. Don't be shy. If you're listening on Overcast, hit the star. It's a good review for us. And follow us at The Y and the By on Twitter. You can check us out on LinkedIn. Christie is at Walters Christie. I am at Jeff Bajorek, both on Twitter. We are out there. We are available, and we love to interact with our listeners. And we're going to record some episodes here in the next couple of weeks about some exciting new changes that we're making to the format of the show in 2018. You're going to get a lot more of us. You're going to get a lot more out of us. You're going to get a lot more from us. And we're going to help you in different ways.
Too. I mean, it's just the way it works, right?
This is true. So, do that and make sure you subscribe and check us out, because we're having fun, and we hope you're having fun with us. So, Christie, Sean's been a great guest, and it sounds like he really knows his why. That's right, because when you know your why, your hows and your whats get much better. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Yep, we'll see you soon. I told you once, I've told you twice. I told myself it doesn't matter. How about the music on this podcast? We call them our house band. They call themselves Haskins, and they're based out of Plymouth, Michigan. If you want to hear more from them, go to haskinsmusic.com and check them out. Hey, thanks for listening to us on the Y and the By podcast. If you like us, tell us. Send us a message at the Y and the By on Twitter, or leave us a 5-star review on iTunes or wherever you got this podcast. We'd love to hear from you. Talk to you next week.
You're listening to the Podcast Detroit Network. Visit www.podcastdetroit.com for more information.